This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, we've got some titles changing hands with different promotions. We've got the lowdown on what's taking place there, when we may be seeing this AEW wrestler coming back, as well as rosters getting trimmed. We've got the inside scoop on all of that. We had a blow-up Dynamite. It was absolutely crazy with AEW with what took place this Wednesday. You know, we're going to take a look at that. We've got to touch a little bit on Impact, and we've got to talk about WWE, and that's where we'll start it. And doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macroon. What's up, cuz?
Introducing the limitless Switchblade, Doc, Egomaniac, ready to talk with Adam this week about wrestling. This week, cuz, it was football, wrestling, and that's what it was for me, and I enjoyed it, man, because of the fact that there was rumblings that the Dynamite show was going to be very, very much a must-watch broadcast. It was great. I got into WWE. I watched it all. WWE, AEW, Rampage, SmackDown. I was all about it because I got a new DVR, and you're not worried about space anymore. I can record like 2,000 hours of everything that I want. So I'm hyped. I'm ready. The AEW belt kind of has infused me with even more energy to talk about wrestling, and it sits on my desk, and I have an opportunity to sit there and enjoy it every single day. So I'm ready, baby. What do you got? What do you want to get into this week?
Okay. Well, first off, before we even get into wrestling, I think the most important question is, what TV provider did you go with? For like those who don't know, John Macroon just bought a new Macroon mansion. It is a spatial estate. And I know you just got your TV set up last week.
Yes,
and
sir.
You just got cable. Like, who did you go with, and what do you have?
I went with the Old Faithful, bro. They were great.
You went with Comcast?
No, Dish, no cable.
Oh, Dish. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
you love Dish. You love Dish.
I'm still with Dish, and so for those that may not know, I tend to lean on the frugal side. But Adam impacted me when he's like, I got this massive TV. I'm going to Brazil. I'm going to Cancun. I'm going on vacation every 3 weeks. I'm like, maybe I should start living like him instead of trying to live like how I live. So I did that. I said, you know what? I have to get a palatial estate to satisfy the wife, the kids, and to keep up with Adam. So
I like how you put it out there like that. Do you realize I buy my jeans from Old Navy and they're like 10 years old?
Bro,
I don't spend money on anything.
Bro,
I do go on trips though, but I don't spend money on anything.
We get along well is we think the same. But for the sake of the narrative here, I wanted to start acting like Ric Flair. So I was always one system behind Dish. Like they have this thing called the Hopper. And
Yep.
bro, you can record like 2,000 hours, but I was always the system behind because it was cheaper. And you can still record like maybe 150 hours. And I'm not really going to watch that much. But this new Hopper, oh my God, you can record 10 things at once. It just sits there and then it goes from 3% to 4%. And I got like all the football coverage, 5 NFL games taped, all the NFL total access that I want to watch. Every wrestling show for this month that I'm going through, it's amazing. So I went with the Hopper, upgraded. So basically, 10% of the budget that I was spending is just on the leasing of the equipment. So it's great, bro. I'm just like, yeah, it's like one of those things where you're just like, okay, I have this budget to spend. And so he was like, do you want the HD kit? Yes. Do you want this? Yes. He even sold me they're like, we do everything. We can install the TV if you need to. Didn't do that, but we can give you a sound bar. So I bought a sound bar from them, and they're like,
nice.
well,
What'd you get? What kind of soundbar?
They recommended a Polk. It was cheap. I use a Bose in the basement in my bedroom, and then the one that he recommended was really great with the subwoofer. Really economical on that, but it's right there. It fits in the living room perfectly,
nice.
And it sounds good. So it's economical in the living room, and then a little more pricey in my bedroom and in the basement. So I have the setup that I would consider to be very happy. You can watch movies with the kids, wrestling, bass, great. It's good stuff. So I'm very happy.
So when I come over,
yes,
will the butler take my jacket and my shoes for me, or do I need to leave those outside?
No, you can just put it. We have a room specifically for that.
So Jeeves will just take it there for me?
No, Sarah will definitely take care of you.
Sarah.
And
she's the maid.
So she'll take care of everything for you. Take you to the special room if you need a massage and a switch. And
okay.
But yeah, it's
tease
good.
Me with a happy ending now.
Yeah, it's very much a great place to live right now, and I can't wait to enjoy it with you. We just need, like I said, we're on the 10-week plan of the furniture in the basement. Once that's all set up, then it's all good, baby. We can watch games, we can hang out, and escape reality a little bit from like I said, just a couple more things to tidy up, and then we're fully ready to go. But man, yeah, the enjoyability of the ability to watch wrestling this week was awesome. What got your attention first? What is it? Was it Raw and moving over to Sci-Fi? I just think for me, you have to put the gimmicky stuff later in the show, not early. You want to draw us in. Starting with another gimmicky thing with the Alphas, it just doesn't work for me.
Well, and here's the thing. I think Randy Orton and Matt Riddle have carried large stretches of Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw has been the B show, maybe even the C show if you're into NXT 2.0. I don't think either one of us are, so it's definitely our B show compared to what you get on SmackDown. And you're going to start it with, like you said, this gimmicky back and forth between RK Bro and Alpha Academy. That is something you should probably put in the middle, kind of when people start waning, because they are so entertaining. You don't necessarily want to kick your show off with that. Like, have that kind of be that bridge, that comic relief, that thing that kind of buffers you between point A and point C. Let that be your middle segment. Instead, they started with that. And on top of that, it was hard to find Monday Night Raw. Like, I'm lucky enough to where I use YouTube TV because I'm extremely cheap, and I won't pay for Dish. I won't pay for DirecTV. I won't pay for Comcast. Definitely not paying for Comcast. So I have YouTube TV, and it basically pops up on my thing because I have it as a record, and it says Monday Night Raw. You just select it, and it takes you to it. I was surprised that it was on Sci-Fi. I did not realize that Monday Night Raw was going to be on Sci-Fi. I feel like WWE did a little bit of a disservice to themselves because, to me, it didn't feel like it was very promoted. And whether it was done on Twitter, whether it was – I don't ever remember this being announced the week prior on Monday Night Raw. So maybe I missed it, and that's purely on me if that's the case. But the fact that it was on Sci-Fi was a little bit off-putting to me, and I did not realize it. It makes total sense. Like, once I thought about it, I was like, oh, okay, NBC has all of the Olympic rights. USA is doing Olympic coverage. That made sense. But you're right. To start with a gimmicky segment on Sci-Fi, to me, it just felt like you were setting the show up for the least amount of success you could have. And then that kind of rolled into what really caught my attention and really kind of threw me off a little bit. So I'm confused by what WWE is giving us. And you let me know kind of where you're at with this. Bobby Lashley comes out to a hometown crowd. And this week he's working as a face. And he's taking in all the accolades as he is the whitest meat babyface you've ever seen. Whereas last week he was operating as a heel. Now you fast forward a couple of segments, and you've got Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. And to me, Kevin Owens seems like he's a face. Seth Rollins seems like he borders on heel, but he's kind of a gray character. Later on in the show, you've got Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins taking on Matt Riddle and Randy Orton, and they are the whitest meat baby faces that Monday Night Raw has. To me, it doesn't seem like WWE and their creative know what direction their characters are going. It's too much bouncing back and forth between face and heel for you to really get invested. Like, it is hard to get invested in a wrestler when you don't really know what direction they're going in. Like, we can take a look at, and I don't want to jump to SmackDown yet, but you could take a look at what's been taking place on SmackDown with Naomi and Sonya Deville. I have no idea what they're fighting over. I have no idea what Sonya's issue is with Naomi. I do know Sonya is the heel in that argument, but I have no idea what they're fighting about. So it's hard to get invested in that story. When Bobby Lashley bounces back and forth between face and heel, it's hard for me to get invested. It's hard for me to get behind him because one week I want to cheer him, the next week I want to boo him, and I don't know what the hell you're giving me. Kevin Owens, again, same thing. You start the show as a face, but then you're going up against the whitest meat baby faces in the company on the red brand. Doesn't make sense to me. Are you just as confused by what creative is giving us as I am?
Yeah, and this is what happens when you're trying to satisfy way too many parties. Look, when a company's trying to do things for profit, I get it. You have corporate sponsors, and different companies are going to say, don't do this, don't say this, know that, and you're trying to work around it. But really, bottom line, going away from the traditional heel babyface kind of lends to what you're saying. It's confusion. You're not, and then what happens is when there's ultimate payoffs, sometimes you just get both. And the bottom line is, I know that we've talked about it for years and in this podcast, but WWE is operating, and it's clear, but they can't say it. They're operating for a profit. They're not operating for the clearest creative endeavor that's out there. Because look, I mean, in what world is Bobby Lashley a guy that changes 5 different outfits and is one day a pimp and then the next day a brawler and then the next day a hat-wearing, babyface? It's just not that. They're just doing stuff to say, hey, we got a show and let's fill it in. So if you kind of remove that, you don't get as much, you don't get confused as much. And so you just look at it like, did I like it or did I not? And bottom line, for the course of a year, all you got to do is look to the debut of Keith Lee, and we'll talk about that when we talk about AEW. Real simple. Nice music, normal-looking wrestling attire, his entrance. I'm Keith Lee. You like it. Really, was it that hard? When WWE did it, they made him like a cartoon character, with weird music, an outfit that was borderline flamboyant, and everyone was just like, what is this? Keith Lee is not that. So how do you juxtapose that in your brain when you see Keith Lee standing there with Brock Lesnar and you almost believe that Keith Lee's bigger and badder than Brock Lesnar? You debut him to that, so that's where the issue is at hand, is that for me, I look at it like I'm not confused. I understand what WWE's doing. They're just putting shows together, but they're not putting them in the way that we would find to be creatively rewarding. But like I said, for me now, I'm just scaling back and looking back at certain wrestlers. I like what KO's doing. I like what Seth Rollins is doing. At the top, they're distinguishing themselves, and they're making do with the shit that they're given, like Riddle, Orton, the likes of Drew McIntyre and everything going on. At the top of the cards are great with the women, but in the mid to lower, you're just there going, okay, is this okay? Is this a good match? What's going on creatively and things like that? So I'm not confused. I'm just disappointed that it's not as creatively satisfying. Like I said, the gimmick, the Alpha Academy could just be, dude, these are great wrestlers. They should be portrayed as a little bit better than this gimmicky type of character. But that's what they're doing, and they're a foil, and they want to expand on it. So that's fine. You can kind of do that. But exactly, Bobby Lashley should really present himself like, walk out to the ring, destroy people, and be this badass. And then that's the way it should be.
I mean, the guy is an absolute freaking behemoth. Like, he's massive. He's a monster. He's a stud. If you let him run, he is a stud. Like, what he did in Impact when he was a champion was great. And they figured out a way to help him get his promos over because, let's be honest, scale of 1 to 10, Bobby Lashley's promos are somewhere around a 3, and that's being generous. He's not great. He sometimes gets distracted by the crowd. He sometimes gets distracted by his own thoughts. It's weird watching him do a promo, but there are ways you can set him up for success. Impact figured it out, and he was a great champion. He had his, I think it was called his run of domination or something along those lines. It was fantastic. It was like a year-long run where he had every belt in the promotion, and he was great. And WWE, I just don't know if they don't see it. I don't know if they don't know what to do with him, but they don't set him up for success, and that is frustrating. Now, conversely, we do have a character in WWE on Monday Night Raw who we know exactly what he is, and he delivers every single time. The Miz is phenomenal at being a heel. The Miz is arguably one of the greatest heels in the business today. And I don't care what anybody says. You could put him up against MJF. I know some people don't care for MJF. I really like MJF. I think The Miz is probably a better heel than MJF, and that's because he basically operates with restrictor plates on. There are certain things that you can and can't do in WWE, and Miz toes the line for what he can and can't do. And I think this segment with The Miz, with Rey Mysterio, and Dominik Mysterio, I think it really helped to kind of get Dominik over. And that's what they've been trying to do. It's been this push to help get Dominik and solidify his place. And I think this segment with The Miz was just that. I think it helped build upon that baby foundation that they have, and I think it helped strengthen it a little bit. The Miz, right before everything kind of exploded, him cutting that little line where he's like, you're a little bit taller than your dad. Are you sure you're not Eddie Guerrero's son? I thought that was a great drop. I thought that was a great callback to 10, 15 years ago. If you are an old school wrestling fan, it tugged on those nostalgic moments where in that storyline between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero were going on over Dominik. And I thought it was a fantastic use of some prior history, really digging in and pulling it to the forefront and allowing Dominik to use a little bit of rage to kind of push The Miz over and then to build towards a fight. And then Dominik ends up getting, I know you don't like the roll-up wins, but Dominik ends up getting a roll-up win over The Miz. What did you think about The Miz, and did he help get Dominik over in this segment?
Yes, he did. And like I said, Miz is another character that's underutilized, but he's now a fixture. So really, what's going to impact him, any feud that he's in, he just makes amazing because he's just a heel, a traditional heel that you love to hate, that maybe could have one good babyface run left in him as he winds down and things like that over the next 5 years. But dude, the guy is amazing. He can do it all, great talker, and his entrance is great. It has stood the test of time that when his entrance comes out, you want to see it. And I thought it was great. Yeah, Dominik Mysterio is doing his thing, and, he's starting to kind of puff his chest out a little bit. I like the segment, and, roll-up win, whatever, but, hey, this is a feud, and there's a tie into it in regards to the shit-talking and things like that. So I enjoyed it. It was one of the decent segments on Raw this week.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the better ones for sure. Now, SmackDown, I felt like was really flat this week.
Yeah.
SmackDown, for the most part, I think you would agree, is more the A show than it is the B show. Usually SmackDown delivers. Usually it's Roman Reigns carrying the weight of that show. This week's SmackDown, to me, was just kind of there. It felt like it was like background noise. I didn't really feel like we moved a ton of stuff forward. I don't really feel like we did a whole lot. And maybe that's just because we've got Elimination Chamber coming and they're trying to kind of fill out the rest of that card. So you're just kind of getting some awkward random stories to kind of buffer you until you get to Elimination Chamber. And then after Elimination Chamber, you can build towards WrestleMania. But the thing that I felt like carried SmackDown this week was Naomi and Charlotte. I thought their match at the very end of SmackDown was incredible. I thought Naomi really helped sell this main event, and I feel like she's completely underutilized in this company. If you just give her time and you just let her go and you let her work, I think she is a fantastic wrestler, and I think she tells a great story. There were times, like going into this match, I was like, Naomi's not winning this. There's no chance Naomi's winning this. If you can somehow change my opinion as the match is unfolding, then you're doing your job. And there were about 2 or 3 near falls where I was like, holy shit, Naomi has a shot at winning this title. And I think she is fantastic. And I think WWE and their women's wrestling is kind of at a crossroads because they don't do a good enough job highlighting their women. They don't give their women enough time. And I just don't think they have enough interesting women where you're like, oh, I want to see that match. It's really dominated by Charlotte. It's dominated by Becky. Bianca Belair is starting to dominate it a little bit more. And then after that, there's not a whole lot. Ronda Rousey obviously dominates, but that's because she's new, she's fresh, she's coming back. I feel like people like Naomi, you need them because she can work in the ring and she is fun to watch. She can cut a promo. She's got all the tools. You need to let her work. What did you think about SmackDown? What did you think about this main event? Because I thought the main event really helped save the show because it was going to be a D- show for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It just kind of has a feel like sometimes in the transition that, they're trying to figure out which way to go and there's not yet an established path. But you look at it and you say, it's just hard because you are judged by what's going on at the top. Roman Reigns is so great that I can't find any avenue of belief that Goldberg's going to win, okay? And it's just one of those things where you look at the feud and you say, does Goldberg realistically have a chance? I mean, the Your Next line doesn't make any sense because Goldberg's taken a series of losses. You're next to what? Show up in the ring with me? So, yes, you said it. The main event saved everything. And that's kind of how it was, too, with Raw. It kind of culminated and built up. Same with Impact. It just kind of built up to the main event, which was interesting along the way. So I can see that. But for me, I look at it and I say, I'm in the mode of, I want to see more Cesaro. I want to see some of those guys that you tell me are amazing, and you give them 10 minutes, and then they go back to where they are. So I'm okay with it. It was enjoyable. The ability to fast forward it instead of watching for 2 hours, to get in an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes is way more enjoyable in regards to how you can push through real fast. But I'll say this. The commercials kind of interrupt things and things like that, but it's a television product, and it's a little bit different. So you do get a stark contrast with Raw than you do with SmackDown because of the condensed 2-hour nature. So you get stuff in more. But here's the thing that makes SmackDown also great. Despite the complaints that we have, Pat McAfee and the broadcast is really on par with some of the greatest stuff you're going to see. He makes it so that you're like, okay, I'm not interested in what I'm watching as the match, but I just want to listen, sit back, and hear Pat McAfee riff it, with Michael Cole. So that's been pleasurable. But moving forward, I just would like to see a little bit of bigger pushes for those on the mid-card moving forward. But, Naomi's doing great work. I'm happy with that. I kind of like the backstage interviewers on both shows. The British guy's cool. The ladies are cool. The segments are, a little bit more succinct in terms of the back. Maybe a little bit more vignettes and more creativeness. But I was okay with SmackDown. I gave it a C.
So this is the thing. This is kind of what I was referring to with Naomi, right? Like, you talk about Cesaro. Cesaro's fantastic. Like, he is great in the ring. There's no reason he should be so underutilized. Yet we don't really ever get to see him. And when he does show up, he'll wrestle the match. Then he might win. He might lose. And then, like you said, he goes right back to where he was. You have these talents. And WWE does a really poor job of getting those guys over. It does a really poor job of setting them up to get themselves over. It's basically Seth Rollins. It is Kevin Owens. It is Roman Reigns. It is Brock Lesnar. It is Randy Orton and whoever Randy Orton is working with that they give the push to. It's like 5 or 6 guys. It's Charlotte Flair. It's Becky Lynch. It might be Bianca Belair. And it's Ronda Rousey. It's like those guys, they get the push. And it's like you have all these other guys who can fill out your roster and give you a really good show, yet they misuse them. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing for WWE fans. I mean, we're going to talk about AEW here after we get your review of Impact. And we had Keith Lee debut, and Keith Lee had a fantastic match. But it wasn't just him in the ring by himself. Like, there was somebody else opposing him who also put on a great show with him. And it's a way to utilize different talent to help get not only the debuting star over, but get yourself over. So people are like, oh, hey, he looked really good. Yeah, he got worked, but he looked really good. He showed some really good spots in that moment, in that time frame. So we'll talk about that in a moment. I do want to get to your review of Impact. What did you think about Impact this week?
Jay White, baby. Oh, Jay White week. Oh, my God.
He's all over the place, huh?
There are so many feuds with factions going on that you really kind of just have to dive in and figure it out, too, because you got the Bullet Club, different incarnations. You got Violent by Design that's been heavily pushed by Impact. But really, this show really boosted up to the main event, which was awesome. But I think this show that everybody's going to be paying attention to ahead of the historic first-time match between the Guerrillas of Destiny and the Good Brothers, taking place at No Surrender, I believe, February 19th. Bullet Club hit the ring, and
it's like Bullet Club versus Bullet Club, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Or like old Bullet Club versus new Bullet Club.
And Jay White spoke and talked about how the Bullet Club has been dominant. Eric Young and Violent by Design were in there and just interrupting. And, I like it to say, Eric Young's faction wants to be the predominant force in Impact. I thought it was great. And, it was just like, for someone that has now peeked into New Japan and learned more about it with the different variations of the factions, because AJ Styles for a minute was part of it, and to see how it was played out this week. The Forbidden Door with the relationship with Impact Wednesday, I didn't even think that Jay White would show up at Impact and do his thing, but man, it was great. Now, the one critique you would say is the women. You have a match that could be pay-per-view quality, that they could have really highlighted, but it was Mickie James and Chelsea Green. but it just kind of felt like a match that maybe they were holding back, and you realize, okay, this is pay-per-view quality. You're going to get good money out of it, but it just didn't feel like it delivered. It was a C-plus match. It'll be interesting to see moving forward with Mickie James and her ability to get other women over, because that's why she's the champ. I mean, she's got experience, cachet, and working with Chelsea Green is nice, but you just would have wanted to see a little bit more. So after the Bullet Club speaks, it's great. You have, really good shows, good things like that, but the main event was highlighted by a no DQ match, Brian Myers taking out William Morrissey, and Morrissey gets over, but it was a good match. Most people would think that, okay, Morrissey's just going to destroy Brian Myers, but hey, he looked like a guy that was, with given time, given an opportunity, could do some things, and it's going to be great in regards to furthering Morrissey as he embarks on bigger things at the top of the card. So it was a B-plus show, really enjoyable. Starts off with, Eric Young, starts off with Josh Alexander opening the show and getting a match in and getting a win over Connor. And it just goes through, flows naturally. A good use of the time that Impact had. You got to peek in, guys. It's something that's there. They're really doing well in regards to character development, doing great things with payoffs, and really to see Jay White, he just has that look like, okay, I want to watch Jay White, and it was great. So B-plus show, peek into Impact ahead of a pay-per-view on the 19th.
Yeah, Impact, another solid performance. Like you said, building towards that pay-per-view, really good work. Now, you talked about Jay White, and I think Wednesday's show on AE Dynamite is the reason you're a wrestling fan. Yeah. It is why you watch every single week. It is for moments like we got Wednesday. In the span of about 5 to 6 minutes, we had the Inner Circle on the verge of breaking up and possibly breaking up, to getting a backstage segment where Trent Beretta gets annihilated by Being the Elite and Jay White shows up, to then getting a debut of Keith Lee. Now, Keith Lee was rumored and everybody speculated that it was going to be Keith Lee. What was not expected was Jay White. And I've got to tell you, I've been a fan of Jay White since he was in Ring of Honor. Huge fan of Jay White. He ended up disappearing for a little bit, ends up going to New Japan, works as a young boy. If you don't know what a young boy is, it's basically the way they grind you down and get you prepared to work that New Japan style, because it is a much harder, much tougher brand of wrestling. You really have to harden your body, and you really have to callous your body to work in New Japan. So that's what young boys do. They start basically at the bottom and they work their way up to the top. Jay White is that deal in New Japan. Basically has held every single title. Jay White debuted, and John, when I tell you, I lost my shit. I went absolutely bonkers. We were waiting all day long for Keith Lee, but when they showed Jay White, I lost my mind. I was running around the house screaming. I did the bushwhacker stomp through the house. The dogs were all chasing me, yelling at me because they didn't know why Dad was so hyped and why Dad was so pumped up. Alyssa couldn't figure out what was going on. It was absolute bananas. I was more hyped, and it was because I didn't expect Jay White. I didn't expect to see Jay White. And if you go down to the news and notes segment of our rundown, the very first note that I have is Jay White is potentially coming to AEW. That was how I was going to start our news and notes segment. Instead, I get to see Jay White on Wednesday night. I lost my absolute shit. I was more pumped for Jay White than I was for Keith Lee. Who are you more excited to see, Jay White or Keith Lee? And what did you think about Wednesday's show just as a whole? Because it's the reason you're a wrestling fan. It is like days later, I'm still excited about what we got on Wednesday.
Yeah, it was great. I thought it was, something that really surprised everybody. And look, when you juxtapose that with the hilariousness of MJF, I mean, the guy comes down and you believe that he really likes standing up there with 6 dudes carrying him down to the ring. I thought was a nice visual. And for whatever reason, his music is like corny, but in a way that you like to listen to it. Like every time it comes on, I always rewind it and it's like da-na-na, 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 and then it's just corny in a way that you like it. So MJF is just elevating himself with the nonsense that he's doing. And I like that CM Punk's like, okay, I got the message. I got the hint that it's not going to be a one-on-one situation. Let's do this. Sting comes out. Man, AEW was just something that was awesome. And then like you said, which one was I more hyped up by? I was a little bit more hyped up by Keith Lee because it was
interesting.
It was juxtaposed with how bad of a debut WWE was. That's where it was.
Dude.
Jay White is a legend. You see him now. We're going to go creative and deep and say, okay, what do we do with Jay White to make it relevant and things like that. But with Keith Lee, it's like untapped fruit that you're like, okay, AEW, what is their spin going to be on this guy? And the first thing is, it's like perfect. Very simplistic. His silhouette is on his uniform. He comes out. The music is booming. And it's perfect. Who am I? I'm Keith Lee. Limitless. The entrance was perfect. The way in which they utilized the crowd was perfect. He took his time and things like that. Of course, the one guy had a little bit of a botch when they were in the rope kind of work. But, dude, the main purpose of the match was to showcase that Keith Lee was going to destroy this guy. And it was great because you had it perfect where the wrestler in the ring definitely was shocked. Matt Hardy showing them looking all concerned. They made Keith Lee out to be a monster. And that's all you need to do. You don't have to invent the wheel here. Keith Lee is a big, huge dude that can fly around the ring. Why are you trying to make him a cartoon character? Whose stupid idea was that? Now, I know no wrestler's perfect. He was out with COVID. There were things maybe that they want him to do to test him out and things like that, weight issues and what they want him to be and things like that. So a company like WWE, remember, is not beholden to stars anymore. They're beholden to the brand, and that's different. Where AEW, you can tell, they get a wrestler in and they're in the machine to try and get them over. You feel like they have a chance to get over. Whereas WWE, you're just a piece of the cog. Are you in the moment? Are you not? And that just stinks, but that's what happens when you're a corporate company. You become more focused on different things, and they don't want somebody to be bigger than the company. That's why they don't even care. Like if I called up there and say, hey, do you guys care that Keith Lee debuted? They'd be like, when? They'd be like, you didn't see it? No. Oh, he was there? Was he on Friday, Wednesday? What'd he do? Oh, was it good? Okay. All right, let's go back to, we're going to make $50 million this quarter from this. Oh, very good.
Dude, I think a great point to kind of back up what you're saying there is when they were planning their Royal Rumble and they ended up reaching out to Mickie James. They didn't even realize Mickie James worked for Impact. They didn't even realize she was the Impact champion. She had to tell them. She's like, you guys do know I work for Impact Wrestling. And they were like, what? And she was like, yeah, like it has to get ran by Scott D'Amore before I can do anything. I am the Impact World Champion.
Right?
And they were like, wait, you are?
Yeah.
You're not just sitting at home waiting for us to call you?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
That's how WWE operates. They're in their own space the entire time. It is weird to watch how these two companies operate because AEW, you can tell, is ran by a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
Tony Khan is a wrestling fan. And WWE is ran like a corporation.
Yes.
It is.
It's just
very
different.
black and white, and it's what it is. It's sad because you're right. Keith Lee debuted, and Keith Lee got to wrestle the way Keith Lee was meant to wrestle.
Yes.
Keith Lee wrestled the way he was made to be special because it's not every day you get to see a 350-pound man. And I swear to God, he is closer to 400 pounds. They keep saying he's 348, but that man is close to 4 bills.
4 bills.
There's no way you get to see a man that large fly around a wrestling ring like he does. When I say fly, I mean he is jumping through the ropes, jumping over the ropes. He is jumping all over the place. He is picking guys up. He picked up Isaiah Cassidy and launched his ass almost out of the ring from one end all the way across to the other. Isaiah Cassidy got lucky he fell where he fell because he could have got impaled by a ring post. It was nuts, and it was awesome to watch Keith Lee debut and to wrestle. And you're right, to compare that, juxtapose it to what you get with WWE every single week, it is banana boats.
And WWE hasn't had a real debut in a minute. It's like they go from NXT to the main show, and that's it. That's what WWE needs. One debut, just one. You don't have to do 10 like AEW's doing as they get off the ground. You just need one. Find somebody, sign them. Let us get a little pop. One. We're not asking for the part of wrestling that we like is surprises. Someone showing up that we don't know is there. And I think that will turn the tide a little bit is if WWE hits their pocket and takes an AEW star and surprisingly puts him in a ring. So we'll see if that happens. But for me, I was a little sad because it feels like the inner circle is going the other direction. But I like the more aggressive Boricuas. That's what you're supposed to do. Those guys got pushed to the background, and now they're like, oh, wait a minute. We got these two dudes that are pretty much one of the best tag teams in the world. Let's do something with them, and let's kick them off, and I think it's the best way to do it. Yeah, Sammy Guevara quitting again is weird, but it kind of juxtaposes that in regards to, we got this young kid that's now on the rise. What are we going to do? But guess what? An inner circle with 3 dudes is pretty much probably in line with what you need to do, as opposed to limiting, Santana and Ortiz. But I love the reference of Chris Jericho saying, maybe I picked the wrong guys. Let me call some other dudes.
I was going to ask you, did you love the shout out to Hernandez?
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was great.
Yeah,
I thought it was awesome.
And because we're inside, fill the people in regards to what Jericho did there, because sometimes it is inside and people are like, huh, and it goes so fast. We all caught it because of what their relationship was with the Boricuas, but fill everybody in, because it was a great line, and it rightfully pissed off Santana and Ortiz.
Yeah, for sure. So Santana and Ortiz were part of a group called LAX, and LAX consisted of Santana, Ortiz, Hernandez. There was another guy in Conan, and basically they were supposed to be South Central LA gangsters. That's what the gimmick was. They were supposed to be ride or die. They were supposed to be hardcore. And basically what Jericho said is, I brought you here. I was the one who selected you. Maybe I picked the wrong guys. Maybe I should give Hernandez a call. And it was Hernandez and Homicide.
Homicide, yep.
Yeah, maybe I should give Hernandez and Homicide a call and bring them in instead of you guys. So Jericho basically throwing back into their face that he is the reason that they are there, and it was possibly his mistake to even bring them in. It was pretty great. It was a nice dig by Chris Jericho. And if you're again, this is what is great about AEW. They realize that there's other wrestling that is going on. It is not confined to just AEW. There is another history out there. Like, you came from someplace else. Let me use that to help get everything over. And they do a great job. So by basically calling out the old LAX and mentioning Hernandez and Homicide and saying, hey, maybe I grabbed the wrong guys. Maybe it shouldn't have been you guys.
And I think about it now as you're talking, it's like a reward for watching. Like, I knew what that meant. Yeah. LAX, it's a reward for being a fan, because you and I have been watching since the 80s. They can go back to Tito Santana and we'd understand references, Mm-hmm. So that's really awesome that they do that. And that's probably the reason why Tony Khan has this with Impact, is that Impact has a long history and has some angles that people liked. Aces and Eights, Beer Money, AJ Styles, things like that. Yes, there were things that went astray, but it is a company that has a tie to wrestling history in the current relevant moment with AEW, and it's great. And it does. It's just AEW is a different alternative, and I don't know, maybe just them being an alternative to what WWE does, it makes it refreshing and things like that. But I'm very curious, because I get a sense that you see somebody that potentially could be a rising star, an up-and-comer that, based on what you saw on Dynamite, could be something that is there that could draw some cash. Fill me in. I'm curious. Who's a rising star? Who could be doing big things?
So you brought up MJF, and that MJF segment was great.
Yeah.
MJF, as he's going through thanking everybody, completely disses Wardlow. Just skips over him, goes right to Sean Spears. And while that's unfolding, if you have to, go back and rewatch it, because what Wardlow does is absolutely fantastic. It's subtle. It's small. It's nothing big and extravagant, but it is fantastic for conveying what he feels and how he's dealing with this continuous disrespect from MJF. So as MJF is basically thanking everybody, Wardlow takes 2 steps forward, and then MJF says Sean Spears. And Wardlow just has this look on his face, and it's just a head tilt, and it's just kind of this smirk and this shake of the head, and then he takes 2 steps back. And you can tell, like, Wardlow is ready to explode with rage. And everybody wants Wardlow to turn on MJF. And we all know it's coming, but we want it now. And this is a great thing that AEW does. You're not going to get it now. You're going to get it when you least expect it. And Wardlow has been key in MJF winning everything that he has won. And I think what you're going to get is you're going to get the Wardlow turn when we get MJF and CM Punk at the upcoming pay-per-view for AEW. But what you have here is you've got a guy. I don't know if you remember. You go back about a year or 2 years ago. Wardlow was really green. Like in the ring, he had a very limited moveset. His moveset's still not huge, but he looks much better in the ring. He moves much more fluid. He looks like a star. Like he looks like a big deal. There are people who look like they have it, right? Like Jade Cargill. If you've seen her walking through the airport, you'd be like, I don't know what she does or who she is, but she kind of has it. She looks like she's something. You're just not sure what. Wardlow has that look. He has that vibe. The way he carries himself, he has been built up stupendously by MJF. Working with MJF has really helped elevate him, and he's gotten so much better in the ring. And again, it's these subtle little things. It's the face. It's the way he conveys his emotion with his body. It's him getting called out by CM Punk and basically taking 2 steps back to the rope. So again, that's a heel tactic, right? Heels basically run away when they're confronted by a babyface. It's doing these little things, psychology in wrestling, that you're not necessarily aware of it as it's unfolding, because the way your mind sees it, you're like, okay, yeah, he's a heel. Like that makes sense, like, because you've been conditioned to see these things as good guy, bad guy. But if you really boil it down and you really pay attention with a keen eye, the little things that Wardlow is doing, I really feel like he is going to be a huge star. I would not be surprised if within the next 12 to 18 months, this guy is a champion, whether it be the TNT champion or whether it be the world champion, because he is doing big things right now. He is a guy who I think we're going to talk about some cuts coming up here with a couple of rosters. I would not be surprised if Wardlow was a guy who got a massive extension, because I am so impressed by the little things that he is doing, because it'll pay huge dividends later on. I think Wardlow is going to be a huge up-and-comer in AEW, and I think he's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, see, so AEW has the television championship in essence, which is good. We like that. But what they need is a belt for somebody like a Wardlow, like an Intercontinental belt. The belt that says, okay, he's moved from lower mid-card to upper mid-card, that's on his way to main event. They need another belt. We got to come up with it. Maybe we'll spitball ideas in the coming weeks, but they need that intermediate belt that lets people know that it's serious, that it has elevation, that you can build from scratch, because I think the perfect amount of belts for a company is 4. The tag belt, a television belt, a mid-range belt, and the world championship. That's all you need. You know, you don't need to go into 24/7, hardcore, anything like that. You just need that one more belt that you would believe right now probably Wardlow is right in line to mix. You know, maybe a Lance Archer, feuds like that, where the mid-card guys can have a focus. You know, unfortunately, Shinsuke is great, but you almost forget what he's doing, that he's the champion. Yeah. And they ruined a good thing. The new belt sucks. The new belt is so horrible. I hate it. The old one's classic. And when the likes of The Miz and Bret Hart, you then go and make it look like the hardcore belt, but shiny. Ugh, I hate it altogether. I don't like anything about it.
And this is the thing. When you have that mid-tier belt, that has to be the stepping stone for the world championship. Like you can't do it like WWE does it, where they've completely devalued those mid-range belts, like that Intercontinental belt or that U.S. Championship. Like those belts don't mean anything; they're just props. It can't be that. It has to be a way to help elevate a wrestler. So you have a guy who is competing, like you said, with the TV belt, or you have a guy who's competing for. We'll just refer to it as an Intercontinental. We'll call it the IC belt for now. You have a guy who's competing for that IC belt, and he wins it. And he holds it for 3, 4, 6 months, whatever. And then he loses it. Well, he's now the guy who's next in line, or he's the guy who is 2 guys removed from being the guy next in line to challenge for the heavyweight championship. And they should have to go on and win a couple of matches to get that number 1 contender spot. And it should be that stepping stone. Now, that guy doesn't always have to win that championship. You shouldn't have that, but it should be the belt to help get you in line to be the face of the company. And WWE doesn't do that. It's there. It's a prop. It's what it is, and it's bonkers. And we'll have some updates on what's going on with that Intercontinental Championship belt with WWE here in the news and notes segment.
Nice, yeah. So AEW is doing some great things. I thought the main event with Adam Page was bonkers, and it was
that was such a stiff match.
Ooh, stiff, man. Good stuff. And I like I like Adam Page's tweet. I'm just tired of bleeding every month, guys. Come on. Good stuff there. I like what I'm seeing. I liked, Adam Cole walking into the ring and saying, "Hey, respect."
How cool was that?
That was great. Exactly. That's what he should be doing.
Like, you thought Adam Cole was going to jump him. At least I did.
Yeah, it was great.
Instead, he hands him the belt, slaps him on the top of it. Like, good job. I'll be seeing you.
And what's good,
I thought it was great.
It's good because you can tell that AEW has a pulse. Like, people are like, dude, Adam Cole's not this guy that you've used him so far. And yeah, it was a little bit slow introduction, but he is a main event guy. Yes, Adam Page should win, but Cole has to be in the mix. So they are paying attention, which is very good, and they recognize, he said in his promo, I'm not this, and I'm going to show people what I'm really here for. So that was good, and by and large, everything that they're trying to do with some of these guys, you want to pay attention to. But, we'll talk about it. There's a couple guys that are getting lost in the shuffle that with a bloated roster could start happening that we need to see more of, and we'll talk about that in coming episodes of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. All right, cuz, we're at that time of the podcast. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So like I said, my very first news and notes was going to be possibly coming to AEW. It's all been confirmed. Like, Jay White is AEW. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I can't wait to see it. If you're unfamiliar with who Jay White is, Jay White, he's 29 years old, started in wrestling under the age of 30. Some of his accomplishments. Again, he went from Ring of Honor to New Japan. In New Japan, he held the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, the IWGP Intercontinental Championship, the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship. He also had some tag belts as well. So basically on the Mount Rushmore of New Japan Wrestling. Now, Chris Masters, you remember him? He ruffled some feathers when he was in WWE, and he has done some things within the promotion that made a couple of people mad. Now, he was the master of the Master Lock, and he thinks he knows why he had some issues with John Cena. He appeared on the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling podcast, and Masters shared this theory on why he and Cena never really clicked. He said, I just don't think John was too big on working with me at the time. I think it was just a little more difficult for us to have good matches with each other. I think it was just that Shawn was easier to have matches with, but Shawn also had so much experience too. He's referring to Shawn Michaels there. With Cena and me, we never got a good rhythm, and in terms of our working, that was probably my fault, but it's hard to say for sure. I just remember that there were some times where Cena had voiced displeasure in my work. It was difficult because I was working with HBK and Cena. Shawn even stuck up for me a few times, saying that he didn't have any problems working with me, and he said it out loud, which was appreciated. It's just, I don't think that I had some issues too around that time. So maybe that contributed to some of that. Who knows for sure, but whatever the reason, I just felt like Cena didn't just take too much pleasure working with me, and maybe he felt like I didn't give him enough of a chance. So I don't know. I don't know the specifics. It's been such a long time. Masters obviously ended up leaving the WWE, and John Cena is John Cena. He's now in Hollywood. So interesting, some reflective viewing of what might have took place between Chris Masters and John Cena when they were both in WWE. Now, Swerve Strickland has multiple companies looking to bring him in following his end in WWE. According to Fightful Select, the former Isaiah Swerve Scott has multiple promoters inquiring about his status with plans in place for at least one major company to use a star. It's also been reported that AEW has asked about Swerve's status very early into his free agency to see when he was going to be available. New Japan USA has also made a firm overture to Swerve Strickland, according to Fightful, and he has met with, or is expected to meet with, MLW to make an effort, if they already haven't, in acquiring his services. So look for Isaiah Swerve Scott to be showing up someplace. Now, most of us hated the run Big E had as champion, and it seems the WWE locker room felt much the same as we did. The morale in the WWE locker room is at a record low, according to Wade Keller on a recent PW Torch VIP audio. One point of contention is the treatment of Big E. He said, I've asked around, and all I've gotten is people who are really upset, with the rug being pulled out from under him. And I haven't heard anything about there being an awareness of an issue with him. And I think the people, and I have asked who would know. Keller went on to say that he hadn't heard anything specific that would cause Big E to be seemingly removed from the main event picture, being drafted back to SmackDown along with the other New Day members, Kofi Kingston, and reportedly returning soon, Xavier Woods. Big E similarly to reports about frustration. Big E reported frustration. Big E reported frustration to T.J. Wilson, who is beloved in the locker room, with Wade Keller going on to add, one person just described him as a magnificent human being who doesn't deserve this treatment. So it sounds like everybody's kind of pissed about the way Big E's championship run went. Now, speaking of rosters getting trimmed, expect the roster at AEW to get slimmed down a little bit. In a recent interview, Tony Khan explained that he wanted to keep everyone on the payroll during the pandemic, since it was really only WWE and AEW running shows. But with the influx of talents, and obviously you don't have enough TV time for everybody, there are going to be some cuts coming. So don't be surprised if AEW starts letting go of a couple of wrestlers who are being underutilized. Now, speaking of a wrestler who is currently being underutilized, Eddie Kingston may be back soon. Per the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Kingston is expected to return to action next week. It isn't currently clear whether the AEW star has officially been cleared to return. Kingston's most recent match was against Joey Janela during the January 8th AEW Dark taping. His injury notably resulted in him missing the World on GCW last month. And finally, some news. This was breaking early Saturday morning. So news coming out of WWE and Impact tapings. Mind you, WWE is taping because they're headed to Saudi Arabia. We now have a new Intercontinental champ, as Sami Zayn defeated Shinsuke Nakamura. And we also have a new Impact champ, as Matt Cardona won the Impact Championship. So look for these matches coming up very, very soon on both WWE and Impact. And that's going to be it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
And not just news, spoilers. Wow.
Yeah, some spoilers. Sorry about that. I should have probably mentioned that ahead of time.
Yeah, man. Give a little disclaimer for people.
My bad.
No, it's
Sorry
all good,
that.
man. Hey, listen, people that follow us are smart marks and they're into it. And dude, when you know something's happening, that it'll make it interesting to see. And plus, you need it. You need opportunities to change and have fresh matches and fresh opportunities to look. Now I'm going to definitely go check it out. Where's the Matt Cardona match going to take place at?
I'm not sure where it's going to fall, and I'm not sure when it takes place. I just seen a bit of a release, a little bit of a spoiler that he won the championship. So
nice. Okay, so it's upcoming.
I don't know the exact date.
How that's going to play out? Yeah,
you can expect the Sami Zayn Shinsuke Nakamura. That's going to take place next week on SmackDown. But for Matt Cardona winning the championship, I'm not sure when that's going to air. Nice.
And great stuff. Another reason to check out Impact Wrestling. Make sure to follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've heard anything that you agree with, disagree with, shoot us a message. We love talking to wrestling fans, and we love interacting during shows, after podcasts, and things like that. Anywhere that you find your favorite podcast, just type in Detroit Sports Podcast and hit that subscribe button, and our daily content will find you relatively easily. We appreciate everybody that listens. We appreciate everybody that takes the time to fire us off a review, a message, a comment, or things like that. We greatly appreciate it. Podcasting time is coming to a close. Man, this hour is also fun. Make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the network, the Michigan Podcast, Fan Report, Open Mic Night, the Michigan Podcast, all good things that we put out each and every week. Thanks, cuz. I can't wait to break down wrestling again. Make sure that you guys get in the mix here, get yourselves over as you listen to the latest editions of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.